I'm back with the 100 horror films in 31 days. This is day 16. I got four films in, starting with 2008's French film Martyrs. This was a subset selection, so it wasn't really my decision to pick this one, but it was fine. I hadn't seen this in a long time. It's a French film directed by Pierre Languier. It tells the story of a girl who apparently escaped from, uh, uh, I guess the best description would be these psychotic uh, people that are basically tortured her, kept her chained in a basement and tortured her. She managed to escape, and then she comes back and gets her revenge. So the film, it's kind of a tale of two stories, and that the first half of the film is really a revenge story. But then the film gets really dives right off under the jumps the shark, if you will, and goes into a much more philosophical torture porn film. I mean, I hate to use that terminology, but I think when you think about torture porn films or that term, torture porn, people will use Hostel as an example. I think Martyrs to me is the best example of, if you want to have a subgenre and call it torture porn. I can't imagine another film that would fit that description better than Martyrs, because uh, the last 45 minutes is a new group having captured this girl and torturing her endlessly. The torturing has a point. The torturing is based on this group. This group has been torturing women for decades. Their goal is to find out what's on the other side just before death. And they figure by torturing young women, they'll eventually figure out and find out, just at that moment of ecstasy before death, they'll find out what's on the other side. Um, it's an interesting blend of uh, really uncomfortable torture sequences coupled with a thinking man subplot that the movie is very divisive. I mean, it's no doubt about it. This movie divides audiences. There's just as many people that hate it as love it. I don't know that there's a middle ground on this film. I'll admit it. It's a tough watch, but it's an interesting watch. And I think the questions that arise from the ending um, are worthy of merit. And the reality is, I think if you've seen this film, you know what I'm talking about. It's open ended. It's open for interpretation, and that's the best way to end a movie like this. So what is on the other side? Man's quest to find uh, life after death. Is there life after death? That's the questions this film is raising. It just does it in a very troublesome way by depicting some very gruesome torture sequences. I will admit this: it's beautifully done, and the special effects are fantastic. I mean, it's just a real uncomfortable watch. But I do give it an 8 out of 10. I think it's a solid, excellent movie, uh, and it gets to its point quickly. This release, this is a Region B release that I got. Uh, it's got, let's see. This is an Optimum release. I've never heard of those guys, but this has a making of, which is feature length making of, a 90-minute making of, and then two, a direct interview with the director and the special effects artist. I'll check those things out uh, in November. I mean, right now my goal is simply to watch movies to try to hit the 100 right now, so I don't have time to watch special features. But yeah, that's Martyrs, and if you haven't seen it, um, I would highly recommend it. It's a thinking man's horror movie. or a thinking man's torture porn movie. How about that? Next up, I've got 1993's California with Brad Pitt, Jennifer Weiss, I believe, and David Duchovny. Juliette Lewis. Not even close. Juliette Lewis. This was directed by a guy named Christopher Sienna, who really, other than this movie and Gone in 60 Seconds with Nicolas Cage, he just did a bunch of music videos. So not a huge director credits for this guy. But it's a good movie. I was pleasantly surprised. Brad Pitt plays a redneck, psychotic serial killer, and he does it in a very believable manner. I thought he did a good job. David Duchovny plays this serial killer obsessed researcher who likes to write articles and books about serial killers, and he's coming at it initially from the idea that, you know, these people need to be helped. You know, we shouldn't be doing the death penalty. These people need help. They're sick. It's a chemical imbalance. So he runs into Brad Pitt, and Brad Pitt's going to be part of his story, and his maturation over the course of this film is fascinating in and of itself. He basically comes 180 degrees the other way. It's an interesting movie. I don't know that it's one that I would repeat viewing, but it's a very good movie. Brad Pitt's fantastic in it. I give it a 7 out of 10. Yeah, so that's California. Next up is a sleazy movie. Really an infamous, famous movie that came out in 1980, and that is Don't Answer the Phone. Richard Hammer, who's a one-time director, directed this film, and it's really, to me, it's a film that captures the tail end of, it's the last of what I call the gritty, grimy, sleazy 70s, 42nd Street type stuff, the harsh, stark, unadulterated type horror movies that we were getting in the 70s and now going into the 80s. I think this film, along with Toolbox Murders, was kind of the last hoorah for some of these really mean-spirited films. And I remember when this came out. This and Toolbox Murders, I mean, there was a public uproar from the religious right. And it is a mean-spirited film. Even today, I mean, the kills in this thing are very clinical. Almost, you know, it's done in a matter-of-fact way that feels very, very clinical, and it works. It's a disturbing movie. And the guy that plays the Vietnam vet, Nicholas Worth, was fantastic. A lot of people think he was over the top, but I don't think so. I think he was perfect for the role. Basically, Nicholas Worth plays this Vietnam vet who is impotent, and he was never able to gain acceptance from his father, so he's got all kinds of issues, and he takes it out on women, basically, strangling them to death and a variety of other measures. And of course, you've got the subplot of the police procedural where they're trying to find the guy and figure out who's doing the killings. Very much along the lines of Toolbox Murders, if you've seen that. Just kind of the story, the plot is essentially the same. This Vinegar Syndrome release is just awesome. Just awesome. You've got a booklet which has quite a bit of promotional information from back then. You've got a Blu-ray DVD combo. Here's the internal artwork. I highly recommend this release. Vinegar Syndrome knocked it out of the park with this film. You've got an audio commentary, which I can't wait to listen to, with the director, Richard Hammer, particularly since it looks like it was just kind of a one-shot deal for him. And then you've got a number of interviews with the composer, soundtrack, promotional gallery, all this other stuff, TV spots. The film looks great. It was mastered in 4K from the original 35 millimeter negative. It looks fantastic. So, highly recommend this Vinegar Syndrome release for Don't Answer the Phone. Just take a shower after you watch it. Next up is 1974's Chosen Survivors. This is a Kino release. And it's directed by a guy that made a lot of TV shows. Mannix, Combat, a guy named Sutton Rowley. He's a veteran TV director, and really the film feels like a TV movie from 1974. It stars Jackie Cooper, who you may or may not know. Jackie Cooper was one of the original Our Gang kids from the 1930s TV show, films. And he is a businessman along with a group of others that are told that there's been an apocalyptic event, and they are supposed to stay down in this underground bunker the government built. Unfortunately, the bunker is not foolproof because there are vampire bats, of all things, flying around the bunker. And of course those vampire bats wreak havoc on the guests. So it's an interesting film. It's as with a lot of 70s made for TV movies. It's light on special effects. I mean, I think they did a fairly good job of portraying a bunch of bats flying around attacking people with what they had to work with. I thought they did a good job. This has an audio commentary with Richard Harlan Smith, which I'm looking forward to listening to. But it was a good watch. Chosen Survivors, vampire bat movie. I liked it. So that'll wrap up day 16, and I appreciate you watching.